What's good, gang? It's your boy D-Wayne, back with another YouTube video. Today, I kind of wanted to explain the best ways to get lighting whenever you're making films and stuff. Let me turn this down. I personally don't use any like ring lights or light bars or buy my own lights. I think buying lights is pretty unnecessary if you learn how to work with whatever sources you got around you. So I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth with that. So one thing I would really start with, and excuse the wind out here, it's just really windy today for some reason. I'm pretty sure like a category 7 tornado is about to blow over my freaking car. But you're in your house, keep in mind like all the light sources that are around you. It could really be anything. Your ceiling lights, your fan lights, your lamps, any other thing that has a good lighting source really works, you know? What I'll do quite a bit whenever I'm filming outside in the dark is I'll try to find parking lots and stuff, and I'll use the lighting sources from those because those are really bright sources of light. And the good thing about those is they're so far away from you and they're so tall that it's almost like daylight shining on you, you know? Now different lights have different brightnesses, so keep that in mind whenever you're shooting. And also as well, you have different colors of lights. Like, you know, you have some cooler lights which give you more of that like moody feel, or you got like warmer lights like yellow lights that kind of give you that warmer, more classic kind of feel. It really just depends on whatever you're going for whenever you're shooting stuff. Another way to use natural light to your advantage is just the sun. The sun is the perfect thing for natural light, and I know it's pretty obvious, but there are some wrong ways to do it. Some common mistakes I see, and you know, these are mistakes that I've personally made from doing this. The first thing you want to avoid as much as possible, especially during bright daylight hours, is you don't ever want to film towards the sun. The problem with filming towards the sun is, well, since it's so bright, it actually makes it a lot harder to balance your light the correct way. The light will usually just flood the lens and make it really hard to see whatever subject you're filming. However, there is an exception to that, and what I like to do, the only time I'll ever film towards the sun is if I'm filming early in the morning, sunrise, or I'm filming at sunset. And I'll go over a little bit later in the video why I do that sometimes. But it actually doesn't affect your lighting and your quality as bad as you think it would. Another mistake, which I've made a couple times and I see sometimes, is you gotta think about what shadows you want to leave out of whatever you're filming. For example, let's say you're filming like a building, or you know, like one of your other subjects. Maybe they're like riding a bike, or I don't know, like skating by you or something. Depending on where you're standing from a sun, your shadow could be in the shot that you're filming. It's not too big of a deal sometimes, but whenever you're making things like that, you want to be as discreet as possible, and you almost want to make the audience think that there is no cameraman. It's just kind of just all happening. So you just don't want to make yourself obvious, like I'm filming this, like I'm holding my camera, you can see the shadow clearly, you can see my body in the frame casting a shadow on the whatever I'm filming. And if you're using like a tripod or something, and you're just setting your camera up on a tripod and you're walking away from it, you also want to try to leave your shadow out of the frame, because honestly I just don't think it looks super good. Be careful how you're using shadows. Now there are times where the shadow works great if that's what you're going for. Like if you strictly want to film your shadow like casting on a wall or the ground because you're showing that you're walking or whatever. Those are like the perfect times to use shadows, and I'll actually implement shadows into my shots sometimes. It just looks really cinematic, and I've always liked shadow shots for some reason. But as far as using the light around you goes, that's all I have to say about that. Another tip I have for y'all is you're gonna invest in something called an ND filter. Now, what's cool about these is, well, number one, they're not really expensive to get. You can get a solid ND filter for under the $100, and the cheapest one I've gotten is $30. You know, it's worth it. Kind of think about it like sunglasses for your lens. In bright daylight situations, you run into a lot of problems where you're trying to keep your ISO really low, and at the same time you're trying to keep your f-stop low too, because you're trying to blur out your background and keep focus on your subject at the same time. Like, for example, this shot, my f-stop is pretty low, and back there it's kind of blurry, but that's because I'm trying to show y'all, like, I'm the subject of this video. I want the audience to pay attention to me while I'm speaking. And what I have on here right now, I actually am running an ND filter, and basically all you do is there's dots on the side of the lens, and you just adjust them accordingly to however dark you want it to be. Then all you gotta do is pretty much just balance it out, and you can keep your settings how you want, and it's so much more versatile than just notching your settings all the way up on your camera and then just not getting the perfect results you want. Since I've had one of these ND filters, it's really changed the game and how I make some of my videos now. The thing I like about these ND filters the most, whenever I'm filming towards a sunset or towards a sunrise, I'll film with my settings on how I want them to, but I'll actually bump down my ND filter lower than I usually put it. And what it does is it creates silhouettes of a subject. Like, let's say I'm in the frame and I kind of want to look like a shadow myself, and it just gives like a really cinematic feel to whatever you're shooting. I've done this multiple times in my videos, in my TikToks and my Reels. I utilize this shot quite a bit, and that's probably my favorite thing I gotta say about this. It's just super useful. It's not very expensive. You can get creative with it and figure out what tricks and stuff you want to implement while using one of these. The last tip I had, it's not really much of a tip, but it's kind of my personal preferences whenever I'm shooting. And this all has to do with in-camera settings. If you own a camera, obviously you'll see in the bottom of your LCD screen that there's 3 buttons usually. One of them is like a fraction. It'll say 1 over something, then you have your F, which would be like 2 point something, then you'll have your ISO, which is usually ranges anywhere from 100 to whatever the max is for it. First off, you always want your shutter speed, which is the fraction number. I usually put it 1 over 50 because I'll shoot 24 frames a second. That usually never changes unless I'm going for a low shutter pan, which is kind of one of my techniques I use. But most of the time I'm gonna shoot 1 over 50. My f-stop, I usually like to leave it as low as it'll go. I may put focus on the background and take the focus off of me, or I may put the focus on me and take the focus off the background. But by doing that, whatever the lowest your f-stop will go will usually make your subjects more blurred. And the higher up you go, the more in focus your whole picture is. Like f22, I think most cameras go to that, if not higher. And it really depends on what lens you're using too. Sometimes I may shoot a higher f-stop, but most of the time it's gonna be lower. For the ISO, it really just depends on the time of day and what the weather conditions are outside. During daylight, I usually shoot anywhere from 100 if it's like super sunny, or if it's super cloudy, I'll shoot maybe like 800. But during darker hours, I usually shoot anywhere from 1600 to 2000. Anywhere higher than that, that's when your footage starts getting kind of buzzy, or the term for it that most people use is film noise. And then you gotta go and post, and then you gotta fix the noise and stuff, and it's actually pretty difficult to do. So I usually try to leave the noise out as much as possible so I don't have to adjust at the end. It just makes things a lot more easier. Now, to make sure your settings are correct, most cameras will have some kind of button on the front of the camera, usually on the handle, that kind of tell you if your exposure is too dark or if it's too high. The key is you want to have it as close to 0 as possible. The clouds just came back out, so I'm actually like kind of towards the negatives, and negative means the exposure's darker, because I had it lined up at 0 before, which was fine, but now that it's kind of dark, it's getting a little bit harder to see me, but we can work with it. And then whenever you get to the positives, that's when the exposure is too bright, and it's not going to turn out looking really good, and you're not going to be able to see a whole bunch of stuff. That's all the tips I have on lighting. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes on lighting my videos, and I still do sometimes, but this is the basics of what I know. I hope y'all found this helpful. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Gonna be posting content weekly pretty much. Try to stay consistent on this YouTube grind right now. But anyways, guys, I'll see you on the next video. Peace.